A soul beside my ear was gloomy and said, "You have been reborn." Someone looked down at the ledger and said, "Ah. I don't remember." A certain soul in my ear was eerie. Revenge. Someone looked down at the ledger and said, "The ledger is not finished yet." A soul beside my ear widened its eyes and said, "You were scumbags in your previous life." Someone looked down at the ledger and said, "Oh, just stay away from him." A soul beside my ear was filled with anger and said, "You were tricked by a concubine in your previous life." Someone looked down at the ledger and said, "Ah, make her jump, and then I'll kill her." A soul in my ear said sadly, "What are you doing?" Someone looked down at the ledger and said, "Make money." Buddhist-style female lead Shuangshang online, rational and calm, super love money. Keywords of the novel. After rebirth, I became the richest man in Beijing without a pop-up window. After rebirth, I became the richest man in Beijing. Download the complete text. After rebirth, I became the richest man in Beijing. Latest chapter reading. Chapter 1. Am I reborn? Am I traveling? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Am I reborn? Am I traveling? In a boudoir of the general's mansion in Dongguo Kingdom, a young girl suddenly opened her eyes. She lay on the bed, her newly opened eyes still showing a bit of confusion. "Is that all?" Her voice was full of doubt, as if she didn't have any special feelings towards the scene she had just seen, as if she had read someone else's story, rather than her own life in the previous life. "What else do you want? Do you think you didn't die tragically enough?" A voice rang in my ear, mixed with emotions that were too complex and angry, as if the one who died was itself rather than Meng Liangchen. Meng Liangchen blinked, feeling a bit miserable, but the voice said it was her previous life, and the woman who had been poisoned did indeed have the same face as her, but she had no memory of it. Now she is still a 14-year-old girl, and nothing that happened in her dream has happened. She thought she was a time traveler and finally accepted it, but now a voice tells her that she is a reborn one. She has been wearing it for half a month now, and every night when she falls asleep, she dreams of this so-called past life, intermittently watching the entire brief life of the past life. "You said I was reborn, but why don't I remember at all? And you have to rely on this so-called dream to learn all of this." The voice fell silent, and Meng Liangchen was curious to ask again, but was interrupted by that voice. "You don't want to think of it yourself," it gave an ambiguous answer and said, "Do you have any plans after reading it?" Meng Liangchen is a bit confused now. What are his plans? She has no plans. "Are you not ready to seek revenge?" The voice was somewhat urgent and resentful. "What kind of revenge?" "That man. I haven't even seen him." Meng Liangchen felt that the man was indeed a bit lacking, but in his dream, Meng Liangchen was mostly wishful thinking, and she couldn't empathize with him. Stay away from him in the future. Moreover, she was more interested in the dowry shops left for her by her mother at this time. When she found out that she had so many industries, she thought she would be very wealthy. However, when she looked at the accounts and found out that these shops were all in a loss-making state, she was almost surprised to drop her chin. This is really a despicable creature. The loss-making accounts left her mentally exhausted and dizzy, and every night when she fell asleep, the sound in her ear kept typing in, making her feel like she was about to score. No, she doesn't have the energy to think about these things. She still needs to wake up and look at her account book, think of any way to revive the shop, but the premise is that the shop must be returned to her hands first. In her opinion, with so many shops, the original owner actually let his aunt manage them. What's the difference between this and giving someone a thumbs up? Is it not fragrant to hold it in one's own hands to make money? When she found out that she had so many industries, she aspired to be the richest man in the world's capital. Men and so on, go to the side of death. Women in the new era don't need men. What about your illegitimate sister? You just let her steal your things. Sitting up to get dressed, Meng Liangchen paused and a chill flashed in his eyes. The man gave it to her, but if she dares to touch my dowry, I'll do my best with her. After Meng Liangchen finished speaking, he quickly put on his clothes and prepared to go out after breakfast to see what the situation was with those shops that had been losing money. As soon as she went out, she saw a girl wearing pink spring clothes walking in from the entrance of the courtyard, and saw a smile on her face. "Sister, you're up. My mother saw that you haven't come for a long time and asked me to come and see you." When Meng Liangchen first wore it, this younger sister kept crying in front of her bed. She originally thought she was a bit tea, but since that dream, she really realized that appearance is not fair. A little girl with deep and poisonous scheming, how could she do it? "Oh, I just slept late last night," Meng Liangchen responded vaguely. Meng Liangjing's eyes flashed with a hint of jealousy, but his face showed a look of heartache. "Sister, you are so young and it's time for you to grow your body. You must pay attention to your sleep time, otherwise you will lose your foundation." Meng Liangchen blinked as he looked at the girl in front of him who seemed to be all for his own good. If it weren't for knowing the true face of this girl, she might not have been able to distinguish how bad this person's heart was for a while. "What my sister said is, I also feel the same way. I need to go out and relax later." Meng Liangjing slightly lowered his eyes and walked beside Meng Liangchen, intentionally or unintentionally saying, "Sister, are you worried about the loss situation of the store a few days ago? Actually, my mother is also very helpless. The business of the store is not good, and the most uncomfortable thing is none other than my mother. My mother is troubled by this every day, not eating well, not sleeping well, and has recently lost a lot of weight. The subtext of this is, my mother has worked so hard, you should understand gratitude. Although the store has suffered losses, you cannot have a single word of criticism. Hey, I don't want to think too much, but last night my mother came to see me in her dream and kept crying, saying that I was too lazy to be the shopkeeper, which caused the store to lose money." Meng Liangchen frowned as if it were true. The two of them walked towards the main hall, and Meng Liangjing had no chance to say anything more. The jealousy in his eyes surged wildly. Meng Liangjing didn't expect to be reborn, but how could this straw bag not be as easy to deceive as in the previous life? At this time in the previous life, she only gave a few simple guidance words, and this straw bag gave her dowry to her mother several times. In this life, why did she say so much without letting go? It's okay, she can't be in a hurry. What she could have snatched in her previous life, there's no reason why she can't snatch it in this life. The two of them walked into the main hall, with General Meng and Meng Liangjing's mother, Qin, having breakfast. "Why is it so late today?" General Meng asked as he saw his daughter come in. "I slept late yesterday." Meng Liangchen sat beside his father and took a sip of congee. General Meng is accustomed to the behavior of his own daughter. "Did you secretly practice boxing again? Where is there?" "Dad, I didn't sleep well last night. My biological father is a martial arts general, and he doesn't allow her to play with guns and swords. Is it reasonable?" At this moment, Qin and Meng Liangjing's mother and daughter, who were sitting on the side, finished their eye contact and knew that their daughter was not successful, so they smiled and interjected. "Liangchen is still young, so it's normal to have fun and sleep." General Meng frowned slightly and looked at Meng Liangchen with disapproval. Before he could say anything, Meng Liangchen spoke first. "No, it's not my aunt. I dreamt of my mother last night," she sighed with some sadness and continued, "the shops my mother left are too difficult to manage. Look at the years you've been managing, although you haven't had a good income, you've lost a lot of weight because of it. My mother scolded me last night." Upon hearing Meng Liangchen's words, General Meng's expression immediately changed. "Move your white and tender little hands and click to collect, fairies. Love you, yo." End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Losing Stores. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Losing Stores. Meng De's face flashed with a hint of worry, did you really dream of your mother? Meng Liangchen nodded and said, yes, my mother is so angry. Meng Deruo pondered for a moment and murmured, is it because your mother's death is coming up soon, that's why she entrusted her dream to you? Is she missing something over there? Do you think she thinks your store is losing money? Meng De looked at Meng Liangchen with a serious expression as he spoke. Meng Liangchen nodded and looked at Meng De with some anticipation, hoping that he would talk about returning the store to her for maintenance the next moment. Qin Shi, who originally wanted Meng De to teach Meng Liangchen a lesson at the dinner table, changed her expression slightly and her smile gradually stiffened. Qin's face changed. This girl's words were fine, but if someone with a heart listened, they would feel like there was something in her words. But this girl has always been a brainless person, so she shouldn't have any other meaning. Qin was about to open his mouth and say something more, but General Meng frowned tightly and opened his mouth under Meng Liangchen's expectant gaze. Maybe she doesn't have enough silver money to spend there. I need to prepare more and send more over this year. After he finished speaking, he got up and hurriedly left. Meng Liangchen's expectant gaze froze, and Qin Shi's face also didn't look good because of Meng De's actions. Meng Liangchen sighed helplessly and said to the voice in his ear, Dad's focus will never be on the real point. The voice in my ear was rare but somewhat gentle. Dad has always been like this, Mom is more important than anything else. After finishing breakfast, Meng Liangchen first went to find the butler Quan Shu in the mansion and borrowed some servants from him. Subsequently, Meng Liangchen took the carriage of Meng Mansion to the addresses of several loss-making shops, and she first went to a powder shop. As the carriage was about to stop at the entrance of the shop, Meng Liangchen looked at the surrounding scene and felt somewhat surprised. This shop is located on Jingjing Street, with a dense flow of people and an excellent location. How could it lose money? And other shops are all bustling, and there are no nearby powder shops around. How could there be no customers coming? She jumped off the carriage and as she walked inside, she vaguely heard a burst of crying and noise coming from inside. My young lady is like this because she used the makeup powder from your place. Now she can't have her whole face anymore, it ruined her appearance. You must take responsibility for my young lady. The woman's voice was filled with urgent sorrow, and one could faintly hear another woman's voice sobbing softly. Why do you just say it's my makeup? Don't talk nonsense without evidence. The man's voice was full of anger and he didn't admit it. I used your company's toner. This is my first time buying your company's toner. I used other companies' toner before and have never had any problems. Yesterday, I used your company's toner for the first time, but in the afternoon, I developed a rash. Now I can't see my face anymore. Are you saying so? Without any evidence, be careful not to sue the official. The man's voice was confident and fearless. You. Break it down. The little girl cried angrily. Meng Liangchen stood at the door and listened for a while, probably understanding the reason, then lifted his leg and stepped in. What's going on? When a 13 or 14-year-old girl came in, the shopkeeper thought it was a guest and warmly welcomed her. Yo, girl, what are you planning to buy? The shopkeeper didn't know Meng Liangchen. Meng Liangchen glanced at the shopkeeper and found out that he wasn't her mother's person. Who are you? What about the steward here? Miss, I am the shopkeeper here. What do you want to see? The shopkeeper smiled. Meng Liangchen turned his head to look at the weeping woman sitting in the seat, her face covered in a veil. At this moment, when someone came in, he covered his face with his sleeve. She walked up to the girl, and her maid stepped forward to block her own young lady. What are you doing? Did your young lady use this family's makeup to disfigure? Meng Liangchen asked directly. Although she was a bit impolite, the little girl was afraid that the girl was here to buy something, so if she fell for it again, she nodded kindly. Yeah, don't buy anything from his house, it's all bad. Little girl, don't spit blood and ruin my business. The shopkeeper stopped and yelled with a gloomy face. Meng Liangchen ignored him and said to the little maid, "Did you bring the powder you bought from here?" The little girl didn't know why, but she nodded and said, "I brought it over." Confront him, he still doesn't admit it. At this point, she was extremely angry. It's just relying on being a shop in the general's mansion, doing whatever you want, causing harm to the heavens and justice. No wonder there's no business. She was also obsessed yesterday. Why did she just listen to this shopkeeper's deception? Meng Liangchen reached out his hand and said, "Can I take a look?" The little maid looked up and down at Meng Liangchen and said, "Why should I give it to you? I am Meng Liangchen, the young lady of the general's mansion. This is my shop. If you really buy it from here and there is a problem, I will take responsibility." Meng Liangchen confidently reported his family background. You are the owner of this shop. You have ruined my young lady." The little maid wanted to step forward and hit someone. "Don't worry, let me see first before making a decision." Meng Liangchen took a step back and quickly comforted him. As soon as the shopkeeper heard Meng Liangchen's name, his expression darkened. He took a step back and waved to the waiter in the corner, whispering something. Meng Liangchen had already noticed his small movements and whispered to the servant behind him, "Go out and stop him." The servant responded and quietly left. The maid looked at her own young lady and saw that she nodded before handing out the powder box. "I'll see how you can solve it. If the general's mansion wants to bully us, we won't give up easily." Meng Liangchen took the box over and saw that the outer package was still a very delicate ceramic box. She went to the shelf where the goods were placed in the shop and compared them. They were exactly the same. She opened one of the boxes and smelled the taste. After seeing the quality, there was no difference. It seems that it is indeed something from this store. We used inferior white peach powder here, which is rough in texture and just smells fragrant. It should have been mixed with other ingredients. A familiar voice reminded in his ear, and Meng Liangchen nodded. Indeed, it seems that this guy only incites her to seek revenge. So what do you think can make that girl's face look better? She is skilled in business and has many small ideas, but she is really not good at treating illnesses. Yes, you continue. As the voice spoke, Meng Liangchen's hand hidden under his sleeve felt heavy, and an icy cold thing appeared in her palm. Meng Liangchen walked back to the girl covered in a light veil. Indeed, it belongs to my family. As soon as she admitted, the shopkeeper's face changed dramatically and he said, "Miss, you can't just talk nonsense. New books and works, move your lucky little hands to collect. Love you all, welcome to comment, collect and ask questions." End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Qin's Swinging Pot. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Qin's Swinging Pot. The shopkeeper said with a cold face, "You said you were a young lady from the general's mansion, but I haven't seen you before. How do I know if you helped the two of them cheat our store? I have already informed the true owner of this store, and will wait for the owner to arrive before we talk about anything else." Meng Liangchen sneered and said, "I'm afraid the person you're looking for may not be able to come." The shopkeeper's face changed and he asked, "What do you mean?" Meng Liangchen ignored him and instead looked at the veiled young lady. "Can I take a look at your face first?" The girl and the little maid exchanged a glance, and the person in front of her who claimed to be the miss of the general's mansion seemed to be different from the shopkeeper. She nodded and took off her veil. Half of her face was now swollen and red, with a few red bumps the size of a grain of rice, which looked extremely frightening. "I have medicine here, would you like to give it a try?" As soon as the little maid heard this, she immediately said, "No, you and this store are the same. Who knows if your medicine will also have problems? My young lady's face will be completely ruined." Meng Liangchen cleanly cleaned his hands and twisted open the porcelain bottle in his hand. Meng Liangchen dug out a piece of ointment and applied it to the inside of his wrist and his face. "You see, there's no problem." The little maid hesitated, but the disfigured girl was somewhat tempted. You can give it a try first, I'll put it behind your ear first. Meng Liangchen knew she was worried, so he suggested. The woman finally nodded. Meng Liangchen asked her to wash her face and personally tried the medicine for her. The fragrance dissipated lightly, and a refreshing and comfortable sensation came over. It was particularly comfortable, and there were no discomfort or other reactions. The ointment applied to the woman's face, and in less than a pillar of incense, the redness and swelling on her face receded, leaving only a few inconspicuous bumps. "Miss, I really stepped back," the little maid exclaimed excitedly. The disfigured girl reached out to touch her face, but Meng Liangchen stopped her and said, "You have bacteria on your hands. Don't touch them now." She asked the maid to find a mirror, and the woman looked at her almost restored face in the mirror with surprise in her eyes. "Thank you." Meng Liangchen shook his head and said, "You don't need to thank me. It was originally because of my store." After repeatedly thanking the girl, she left, and Meng Liangchen turned his gaze back to the shopkeeper. Next, it's his turn. The shopkeeper's face turned unpleasant and he said, "Miss, you made the decision without authorization and ruined the reputation of my store. I will take Miss to see the official." Meng Liangchen lazily said, "Oh. You don't need to meet the officials. Let's meet General Meng first." She gestured to the several servants behind her, "Bring it back to General's mansion." As soon as she finished speaking, the servants stepped forward and escorted the shopkeeper, who was truly panicked. "What are you doing? In broad daylight, there is no royal law." Meng Liangchen ignored his noisy behavior and instead had his servants close the door and take him back to the general's mansion. Meng Liangchen headed straight to Mengda's study, and at this moment, Mengda was discussing Lady Meng's death with the butler Uncle Quan. Seeing Meng Liangchen's fierce battle, he was somewhat surprised. "What's going on with you?" Meng Liangchen looked a bit aggrieved and said, "Dad, you have to make the decision for me." She told the whole story in its entirety, and the more Mengda listened, the worse his expression became. In the end, he ordered someone to call Qin Shi over. As soon as Qin arrived, Mengda pointed to the person kneeling in the room and asked, "Do you know this person?" After seeing the person's appearance clearly, Qin was surprised in his heart. How could he be here? She calmed down her doubts and maintained a good expression on her face. "General, this person is the shopkeeper of the rouge shop." Mengda looked at the shopkeeper and said, "Can you tell Aunt Qin about what happened just now?" In the midst of Qin's somewhat uneasy expression, the shopkeeper of the rouge shop recounted the matter once again. His expression at this moment was uneasy and he dared not speak much. He also thought that Aunt Qin could help him escape, so his gaze towards Aunt Qin was full of anticipation. "Boss Qin, these have nothing to do with me. They are all." Qin's gaze turned and he immediately interrupted, "Perhaps your batch of cosmetics is not well controlled. I've been too busy lately and ignored it. I used to personally monitor the raw materials. I'm trying to throw the pot on the head of the shopkeeper." The shopkeeper looked at Aunt Qin with some disbelief, but in her threatening gaze, she still didn't say anything. Meng Liangchen had watched enough of the play at this moment and sighed with some regret, "Aunt Qin is really working hard. No wonder my mother gave me a dream last night and scolded me for being lazy. Dad, I will personally check the situation in the future, and this kind of problem will never happen again. Damn it, this shop is considered abandoned. She wants to start over and do something else." Mengda looked at her with some surprise and said, "Are you taking over?" Meng Liangchen was about to nod, but Qin Shi took a hasty step first. "General, how can this be done?" Meng Liangchen looked at her and calmly asked, "Why not?" It seemed that she felt a bit impatient, and Qin smiled unnaturally. "Liangchen, you're still young and don't understand these things. Taking over hastily is not a good decision. Moreover, you're in the midst of growing up, and these accounts and miscellaneous matters are too many, which will damage your foundation." Meng Liangchen smiled at the corner of his mouth and said, "But auntie, I have entrusted these shops to you with peace of mind. For so many years, they have always been in a loss-making state. If this continues, the shops will be gone. She looked at Mengda and said, Dad, these are the only things my mother left for me. I don't want to lose them like this. I can learn what I don't know, but I don't want them to disappear completely. She looked at Aunt Chin again and said, Aunt Chin has been in charge for so many years, and she has stopped here. I believe she really doesn't have much ability to do business. I started from scratch, no matter how bad it is, the result cannot be worse than it is now. Mengda listened to Meng Liangchen's words and a hint of surprise flashed in his eyes. Previously, as a girl, he had no real interest in these things. Even though he knew he was losing money every month, he never took over the past year. It seems that Madame's dream has really worked this time. It's also a good thing. His daughter is too weak, and after this incident, her growth and development are also good. Okay, since that's the case, Qin, you can return all the shops to Liangchen for management. Mengda happily settled this matter, and whatever Qinshe said was of no use. Meng Liangchen achieved a complete victory in this battle, and in the end, he happily carried a box of account books and walked back. How's it going? The voice in my ear generously praised, well done. It's just. She hesitated and asked, can you really do these things? Meng Liangchen smiled confidently and said, you underestimate someone who will become the richest person in the capital in the future. Just wait and see how I can turn things around. At this moment, behind Meng Liangchen came Meng Liangjing's somewhat anxious cries. Sister, wait for me. Meng Liangchen unexpectedly stopped and looked at Meng Liangjing running towards him, feeling somewhat surprised. Why did she come back? Are you here to stand up for Qin Auntie, or are you trying to persuade her to return the management of the store to Qin Auntie? But Meng Liangjing's true purpose surprised Meng Liangchen a bit. Meng Liangjing caught up with Meng Liangchen, with a somewhat complex expression on his face, helpless and heartbroken. Is sister really going to manage it herself? Meng Liangchen responded, and Meng Liangjing may also know that there was no room for a turnaround in this matter, so he talked about another matter. Sister, has the face of the lady who was almost disfigured been healed? Meng Liangchen nodded and said, it's cured. Meng Liangjing's expression in her eyes visibly brightened, and she asked, it was my sister who cured it with a special ointment, wasn't it? As she spoke, the voice in her ear immediately reminded, be careful, she came for the ointment. Meng Liangjing knew that the mother who passed away Meng Liangchen had left her many good recipes, including this ointment, which she had not obtained in her previous life. In this life, she must get it. Meng Liangchen looked at the ointment on his hand and casually placed it in the hand of the young lady who had regained her face. Yeah, but I gave all the ointment to that girl. Meng Liangjing's eyes flashed with a hint of annoyance, and she said, that's really a pity, sister. I don't know if you still have it in your hand. Or tell me the recipe and I'll make it myself. She lowered her head a bit embarrassed and said, my face has been feeling a bit uncomfortable lately. If I want to use that ointment, it might be better soon. Meng Liangchen looked at her with some surprise. Did she openly ask for it from her? Unfortunately, I lost that prescription and that bottle was the last one. You know, I didn't pay much attention to those things. After she finished speaking, she turned around and walked away, leaving Meng Liangjing in place with a sinister gaze. What's wrong with Meng Liangchen today? After Meng Liangchen returned to the room, he put down the box and poured himself a glass of water to drink, sighing comfortably. What exactly are you? Or, who are you? She opened her mouth to the sound in her ear without warning. In fact, she had long suspected that this voice appeared inexplicably, but she was also extremely concerned about her body, knew the ingredients of the powder like her fingertips, and could easily take the therapeutic ointment. The voice remained silent, and Meng Liangchen made many guesses, but he still couldn't get a result. Don't guess, I won't harm you. Meng Liangchen's eyes rolled and he said, how do you want me to seek revenge? I want to. The voice seemed lost, unable to explain why. Meng Liangchen sighed. After all, she is still a kind girl. Even after such a tragic life in the previous life, she did not have any killing intent. In fact, she had vaguely guessed that this girl was probably the true Meng Liangchen from the previous life, and she was just a wandering soul that had traveled through this life. Meng Liangchen didn't think about these anymore. She took out a few pieces of grass paper and wrote and drew on it. The sound in her ear remained silent for a long time. What are you drawing? The sudden sound startled Meng Liangchen, who was in a state of concentration. I plan to make some changes to those shop's drawings. I can't understand. Of course you can't understand, this is something from my time. The first rouge shop she went to today can't be taken anymore, it needs to be changed to another one. The location is excellent, but the shop is a bit small, but there is a second floor, which can be converted into a jewelry shop. When the time comes, she will draw some novel hairpins and introduce some modern trendy things, which should be able to be raised. As for other pharmacies and clothing stores, they should be replaced if necessary, renovated if necessary, and relocated if necessary. What are you doing with this? The voice in my ear was puzzled. Making money, having money in hand makes it easy to do things. Meng Liangchen continued to write and paint. She drew a blueprint, consisting of 17 or 18 pieces, and then went out to find her father. Her father couldn't understand it, so he threw her to the butler and asked him to take care of her. Meng Liangchen is now focusing on the renovation of another store, which has a good location and a large storefront. Previously, she worked as a restaurant, but business was not good, wasting that space. She wanted to do something else, and the voice in her ear suggested that she do rouge and other products, but Meng Liangchen felt that it was too narrow and wanted to do some skincare products. According to her investigation, there is currently only one type of skincare product used by women, such as facial oil. She believes that she can further develop something else. In modern times, she mainly sold skincare products through e-commerce, and she knows some of the ingredients inside. Although this technology cannot extract them, using some raw materials for processing can have a short shelf life, but pure natural things can also have an effect on the face. All arrangements are ready, and the store here is undergoing new decoration. Meng Liangchen has decided to personally inspect the selection of raw materials. She waited for a long time before General Meng agreed to let her personally purchase the raw materials needed for skincare, and sent many guards to accompany her. Upon learning that Meng Liangchen was about to leave, Meng Liangjing hurriedly arrived. "Sister, are you going on a long journey?" Her voice had a hint of restrained urgency. "Do you have anything to do?" "I'm afraid this cheap younger sister is not just here to ask. So, can you still attend the Empress Dowager's birthday banquet in a few days?" Meng Liangjing had already coaxed Meng Liangchen to go with her before, and in the previous life, Meng Liangchen also took her with him so that she could see that man. This time, there should be no change. A new book opens up a pit, click in and let the little fairies who think it's okay use their little hands to collect, recommend, and give suggestions. There is still a chapter at 12:00 in the morning, end of this chapter. Chapter 4. Men of Unknown Life and Death. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. Men of Unknown Life and Death. Meng Liangchen said nonchalantly, "If you can come back, go, if you can't come back, don't go." "How can that be done? You have already taken a post from the palace. If you don't go, wouldn't it be a crime of deceiving the emperor?" Meng Liangjing appeared somewhat unscrupulous due to his anxiety. Meng Liangchen's movements paused, and he looked at her with a smile on his face. "Sister, be careful when you speak. The crime of bullying you is just talking nonsense. That would be the punishment for the 9 clans." Meng Liangjing was choked and speechless, biting his lips in anger as he walked away. The carriage left the city the next day, and Meng Liangchen and a few little maids sat inside the carriage reading a book. Shortly after, they heard the coachman suddenly sigh and the carriage stopped immediately. The inertia of the carriage almost caused Meng Liangchen to fall off her seat, but fortunately, the red-eyed hand beside her quickly stopped her. "What's going on?" Shirtsue asked outside. "It seems like something suddenly happened ahead." The coachman also had lingering palpitations, and if something unexpected happened, he couldn't afford it. Meng Liangchen furrowed his brows slightly, and the others waited for a moment, but still hadn't received a response from the guards. Shihong lifted the curtain on the side of the carriage and looked outside, only to find that because it was too far away, only 4 or 5 guards seemed to be looking around something, but couldn't see the truth. "Miss, can I go down and take a look?" Meng Liangchen nodded, lightly responded, and then lowered his head again to read. The book in his hand was transformed by a voice in his ear a few days ago, and it contained many precious prescriptions. Shihong got up and walked out with a bent waist. Although the other little maids were also curious, they did not follow her out of the car. Only the young and mischievous little Shirtsue secretly lifted a corner of the front curtain and looked out curiously. Shihong walked to the front and only then did she see what was blocking their way. The guards of the general's mansion were surrounded by a person dressed in black strong clothing, looking guarded and not daring to approach. The man seemed to have fainted, lying on the roadside with blood stains all over his face, unable to see his original appearance clearly. It was only evident from his body that he was a tall and robust man. The man's hair was coiled around his head, as it was somewhat scattered, and the falling hair covered half of his face, whether it was dead or alive. The sky is getting late now, and the sun is about to set. How could a man of unknown life or death appear here? Didn't anyone else notice him? And what exactly is the identity of this man? How could he have suffered such a serious injury and fainted here? The guard saw Shihong walking over and quickly bowed. "Miss Shihong, she is an unidentified man. What should she do?" They didn't have much sympathy for a man who fainted on the roadside. After all, escorting the young lady was their task. Moreover, they had a deep sense of vigilance against men who came from unknown sources and were injured all over. Who knows what identity this person is he a bandit fugitive or something like that? And this person is just lying on the roadside, blocking their way, which will delay their journey. They can't make it to the next village or find a hotel. Do you want Miss Jean Ji Yi to stay outdoors? If the young lady were to blame them, they would not be able to bear it. So, let's leave this issue to the young lady's maid and let her decide on her own. Shihong was clearly startled when she saw a man with a blood-stained face and an unclear expression. When did she see such a scene? She couldn't help but turn pale, took a slight step back, and then covered her mouth and nose with an embroidered handkerchief, frowning slightly. Is this person dead? After being reminded by Shihong, a guard approached and flipped over the man on the ground. A puddle of blood flowed from under the man's body, and his abdomen was injured, bleeding incessantly. The man did not react to the guard's flipping. The guard placed his finger between his nostrils and gently probed, only to find that he was still breathing. "Miss Shihong, he is still alive." Shihong looked at the man lying on the ground and then asked, "Is there anything on his body that can prove his identity?" After listening, the guard reached out and groped around the man for a while, only to find that there was nothing on his body. After hearing this, Shihong said, "I'll go ask Mississippi." Shihong turned around and returned to the side of the carriage, saying to the door, "Miss, there is a man lying on the road ahead. He seems to have been seriously injured and still alive. Do you think? Should we save him?" Meng Liangchen's hand, which was originally flipping through the book, suddenly paused. A man. A man whose life or death is unknown. Meng Liangchen suddenly felt very uncomfortable in her heart, and she inexplicably remembered the scumbag from her dream. No help. Be careful of the dog biting LV Dongbin. The voice in my ear sounded, as if with some resentment. Meng Liangchen's eyebrows furrowed slightly, almost imperceptible. After a long time, he gently spoke up and said, "Let's go." Shihong turned around and walked towards the direction of those guards. A few maids in the carriage looked at each other. "You look at me, I look at you. Their young lady has always been kind-hearted. She doesn't even have the heart to hurt a little butterfly or sparrow in her daily life. Why is she so abnormal today? Refusing to save her from death." But at this moment, Meng Liangchen's heart was filled with turmoil. Whether before or after wearing it, she received education based on goodness, refusing to save in the face of death, which was not her style. Is it because she remembered that man again shortly thereafter? Shihong returned to the carriage and the carriage slowly began to move. But Meng Liangchen could no longer read a single word. Before the carriage had taken a few steps, Meng Liangchen suddenly spoke up. "Picking up red. Mississippi." Shihong looked at her own young lady in confusion. Is it because the young lady has a strong conscience and ultimately cannot bear to see death without saving her? Meng Liangchen struggled in his heart for a while, and the two soldiers engaged in a fierce battle. After a long time, he spoke up and said, "Ask our accompanying doctor if there is any life-saving medicine. Feed him one, and then move to the roadside. Don't block our way." Shihong was slightly stunned for a moment, then quickly agreed, then lifted the curtain and walked out again, asking the coachman to stop the carriage. Shihong jumped off the carriage and asked the guards to lift the man up and carefully investigate his injuries. At this moment, several men in black rode towards this side and saw familiar figures lying on the road, wanting to step forward. They then noticed that the convoy in front had stopped again. Several guards dragged the man from the ground. Although he was far away, his body shape, physical features, and even clothing were very similar to the person they were looking for. New books and works. Use your little hands to add a collection. If you have any remaining recommendation tickets, give one. Thank you, beautiful fairy Momoda. Welcome to Catch Insects and Give Suggestions. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Curiosity Kills Cats. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Curiosity Kills Cats. One of the guards had a slightly nervous voice, and from a distance, it seemed that the master's injury was quite serious. The black-clothed man led by the horse furrowed his brow slightly, but he did not make any plans to immediately go and bring the man back. Their identities are not easily exposed, and the identity of their owners must be kept confidential. If they go rashly, it will inevitably cause some unnecessary trouble. The person in front of the carriage should be a wealthy family with accompanying doctors, and the owner should receive proper treatment. As night fell, they silently took their master away. On the other side, Meng Liangchen's accompanying guards were obviously experienced. After seeing the man's injuries, they concluded that he had all suffered some knife wounds and did not hit any vital points. However, several knife wounds on his body were deep, and he had already shed a lot of blood. The wounds must be treated immediately. "Miss, the man in front seems to be seriously injured and needs to be treated immediately, otherwise his life may be in danger." Meng Liangchen was lost in thought while reading a book, which she had never seen or heard of in modern times. The wisdom and culture of ancient people were truly profound. "Then treat him and throw him away." The guard responded and then turned back, but just then, a slightly panicked low shout came from ahead, belonging to Shihong. Meng Liangchen immediately frowned and asked, "What's going on?" The coachman outside the door ran to the front to see what was going on, and then came back to answer. "Miss, it was the injured man who grabbed Miss Shihong's ankle and didn't let go, scaring her." Meng Liangchen raised his eyebrows in surprise, got up from the carriage, and walked towards the injured man lying on the ground. Shirlan saw her coming down and stopped her in disapproval. "Miss, it's better not to go there." Meng Liangchen waved his hand and said, "It's okay, I'll go take a look." When Meng Liangchen saw the man, he was startled for a moment. The person on the ground couldn't even tell their original appearance. Their clothes were torn, and their blood-stained hair and face were stuck together, looking extremely disheveled. A bloody smell rushed down his face, and Meng Liangchen couldn't help but step back. But at this moment, the hand that was originally holding onto Shihong's ankle, stained with blood, suddenly released and turned over. When everyone reacted, the person had already reached out and grabbed Meng Liangchen's neck, letting him turn his back to him and restrain her. Meng Liangchen was startled in his heart and shouted softly, "Ah!" The casual guards and Shihong and others all changed their faces. Shihong exclaimed in shock, "Let go of my young lady." The man lowered his head slightly, with his face covered in hair and a half-mask on, unable to see any expression. "I have no intention of hurting anyone, take me with you." The man's voice was hoarse and dull, and he didn't have much strength to listen to, but everyone still dared not act rashly. Meng Liangchen felt that she was not exerting enough force while pinching her hand, just holding it weakly. She reached out to stop everyone who wanted to come forward and looked at the man. "You let go of me now, I will order someone to help you heal." But the man's palm remained firm, and Meng Liangchen took a deep breath. "If you let go of me, I will definitely save your life, but if you don't let go again, don't blame me for being impolite." But the man still didn't react. What he wanted was not temporary treatment, but accompanying him. If he were left here, Meng Liangchen might have been killed by the pursuers the next moment. Meng Liangchen silently felt the heavy breath of the man behind him and the strong smell of blood on his body, and had an impulse to use his feet to step on the feet of the person behind him. But Xiaoming is in the hands of others, and she dare not take risks even though she cannot feel any killing intent on them. "You let go, I'll take you away." As soon as she spoke, her hand miraculously loosened, as if she knew she was truly saved. While everyone breathed a sigh of relief, the person collapsed backwards with a straight body. Meng Liangchen withdrew his foot and looked at the person on the ground in surprise. This person is too confident, isn't she afraid of her words being untrustworthy and turning around to leave? After rescuing the person, there was a delay of some hours due to treating the injury. Shilan looked at Meng Liangchen, whose face was somewhat tired, lifted the car curtain to look at the outside sky, and then looked around at the situation. On the side of the road is a forest. If you plan to spend the night in the wilderness tonight, it may be more suitable to enter the forest. "Miss, I'll go down and order you to set up camp and camp." Meng Liangchen lightly responded, closed the book in his hand, leaned against the carriage, closed his eyes and absorbed the content of the book. "You shouldn't have gone down earlier," the voice in your ear whispered softly. "Curiosity killed the cat, carelessness." Meng Liangchen closed his eyes and thought to her. As night fell, the moonlight gradually enveloped the entire earth. Meng Liangchen and his group gave way to the main road and entered the forest. The guards camped and set up several tents in the forest. However, the number of tents was originally just right, and now there is an injured patient, making it a bit crowded and insufficient. Meng Liangchen felt a bit resistant to that person and wanted to stay away from him, so he chose to rest on the carriage for a night. That's good. It's cool at night, and the tent is no more comfortable than on a carriage. Meng Liangchen and his little girls sat on a clearing in the forest, where a bonfire was lit and some wild game was brought in by the guards. Shihong flipped through the rabbit meat on the shelf while talking to Meng Liangchen and others. Shilan walked over and draped the cloak she had taken from the carriage onto Meng Liangchen. "Miss, the night is deep and the dew is heavy. How about you wait on the carriage?" Although it was already the spring season, the night breeze was still very cool. Meng Liangchen looked up at the clear night sky and felt extremely good. "How is that person's situation?" Upon hearing Meng Liangchen's question, Shihong replied. "He is still unconscious and hasn't woken up. His body seems to be a bit feverish, but fortunately we prepared some essential medicinal herbs before going out. Dr. Jiang has taken them for him, and I don't know if he can handle it tonight." Meng Liangchen lightly responded, and Xiao Shizue curiously glanced at the tent behind them. The rescued man was inside the tent behind them, and her eyes couldn't help but be filled with curiosity. "Miss, he almost injured you today. What if you were a bad person?" Meng Liangchen looked at Xiao Shizue, who looked innocent and curious, and said, "He is currently in dire straits and has no ability to harm us. When he wakes up, let him leave." On a makeshift bed inside the tent, the man in black was stripped naked by several guards and lay with his back facing up. Most of his injuries were on his back, and the blood had almost stopped. Dr. Jiang sprinkled medicine powder on him, wrapped several clean white cloths around him, and the rest was left to fate. The crowd dispersed, and the man with tightly closed eyes suddenly furrowed his brows, as if he had regained some consciousness. "New book opening. Do you still have my old fans? The little fairies who clicked in, give me a collection, give me a recommendation, give me a suggestion. Catching a bug is also okay." End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Dongguo and the Wolf. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Dongguo and the Wolf. The man slowly opened his eyes, his vision somewhat dim, clearly at night, and everything within his sight told him that he was in a tent. A hint of doubt flashed in the man's eyes, a hint of confusion, as if he didn't understand where he was now. When he wanted to move and get up, the abnormal pain in his back made him suddenly take a breath of cold air, and his eyes turned black, almost fainting again. The man slowed down and once again looked around the tent. The tent was empty, and he was seriously injured. Several shadows seemed to be faintly reflected on the tent cloth, as if it belonged to a woman. Where is he? He remembers being injured and falling on the road. Just as he was puzzled about his situation, the sound from outside reached his ears without warning. The girl's voice is childish and delicate, as pleasant as a silver bell. Shi Hong took the rabbit meat from the fire, cut off a rabbit leg with a knife, and handed it to Meng Liangchen. "Let's eat together." A few people divided the rabbit meat, and Meng Liangchen bit by bit tore the rabbit meat in his hand. The food was particularly satisfying. Although there was no cumin barbecue powder, the original flavor was also very delicious. "How about listening to me tell a story when everyone is enjoying their meal?" Upon hearing that the young lady was going to tell them a story, Xiao Shizue's curiosity exploded, and her eyes were filled with a curious light. Okay. Shilan looked at Xiao Shizue's unruly behavior and, with a grudge against her, slammed a chestnut on her head, making a sound of reproach. "There are no rules at all, how can you talk to the lady?" "Ah! Sister Shilan. You knocked on me again." Meng Liangchen vividly told them the story of Mr. Dongguo and the wolf that they had seen in modern times. A few girls rarely heard such an interesting story, and they opened their eyes wide, carefully listening to Meng Liangchen's soft narration. The man in the tent calmly suppressed his desire to leave, forcing himself to calm down. His current physical condition did not allow him to act recklessly, and there seemed to be no threat at the moment. He listened to Meng Liangchen's voice in his ear and miraculously calmed down. Xiao Shizue was filled with righteous indignation and said, "Ah! Why is that wolf so heartless? Mr. Dongpa saved him, and he still wants to eat Mr. Dongpa. Yes, because of its ruthless and heartless heart, even if someone extends a helping hand to him, he will not be grateful or show gratitude for it. On the contrary, he will betray and kill those who have shown kindness to him." Meng Liangchen's words shook the man inside the tent. What is she implying by insinuation? That wolf is really despicable. Such a vicious beast should not have been saved. Xiao Shizue bit off a piece of rabbit meat with hatred, which was not worth it for Mr. Dongpa. The man inside the tent felt inexplicably uncomfortable when he heard the phrase, beast, as if those two words were cursing him in his heart, making him listen harshly. The man couldn't help but furrow his brow, holding back and still remained silent. He wouldn't be like that wolf. "Miss, did Mr. Dongpa end up being eaten by a wolf?" Little Shizue asked curiously. Meng Liangchen did not directly answer Xiao Shizue's question. "So, sometimes we shouldn't have a flood of sympathy. Everyone should lend a helping hand, and in the end, we may end up being avenged by the wicked and die tragically. Xiao Shizue scratched her head in confusion, and nodded along, seeming to understand. She looked like she had been taught. But he's a person, not a beast. Xiao Shizue's innocent and naive expression amused the several girls sitting there. Shirlan lightly patted Xiao Shizue's forehead and smiled, saying, "Silly girl, this is just a metaphor." The man was listening attentively as he stretched out his ears. Suddenly, a few faint sounds came from his ear, and his alertness immediately recovered. He held his breath, and years of experience told him that this sound did not belong to the voices of a few people outside. The man, because he was topless, had lost his previous weapon. He frowned tightly, his muscles tightened, and was ready to face unknown dangers at any time. Against the backdrop of the flames, a black figure appeared in the other direction of the tent. The man clenched his fists and stared tightly in that direction. I saw the black figure flash into the tent. The man carefully observed the figure of the black figure, dressed in strong attire, walking cautiously towards him. Alert and experience tell the man that this black figure does not carry any malice or murderous aura, but the man on the bed still dare not relax a bit. As the figure gets closer and closer, the man deliberately lowers his voice and drinks softly. "Who?" The black figure heard the man's voice and noticeably paused, then quickened its pace. It took 3 or 2 steps to step in front of the man's bed, shorter in stature, and even knelt down on one knee. "Master, I am a subordinate." The man only relaxed his guard when he heard the familiar voice. "It's Cheng Yuan, his subordinate." And Cheng Yuan seemed to smell the bloody smell in the air, instantly confirming the fact that the man was seriously injured. "Master, are you injured? I can't believe those people really dare to make such a fierce move." Cheng Yuan took out a porcelain bottle from his pocket and poured out a red pill for the man to take. The man drank the pill and frowned as he stood up. He couldn't stay here anymore. His identity would cause trouble for these women and he must leave immediately. At this moment, Meng Liangchen's voice came again, and the man's movement to get up was already difficult. By the time he got up completely, the story had already been heard. This time it's about the story of a farmer and a snake. His face changed one after another. I don't know why, he just thinks that the woman who is telling stories outside is definitely pointing fingers and cursing locusts at these 2 stories. He always felt that she would sometimes compare him to a wolf and then to a venomous snake. Find out which family this is from, as soon as possible. He gritted his teeth a bit, not sure if it was due to physical pain or something. Cheng Yuan responded and helped the man quietly leave from behind. Before leaving, the man glanced through the forest at the woman next to the fire. The woman surrounded in the middle smiled sweetly and her face was a bit blurry. "You don't want me to know who you are, so I have to know who you are." Shortly thereafter, Dr. Qin, holding a medicine bowl, walked towards Meng Liangchen. "Miss, that person is missing." Meng Liangchen looked over with some surprise and said, "When?" They were just immersed in the joy of storytelling and didn't notice any movement. "Say it again." "This is not the man from the previous life." End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Obstruction of Acquisition. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7 Obstruction of Acquisition. Dr. Qin was also uncertain and said, "I don't know. I just wanted to feed him medicine, but he has already left." Meng Liangchen frowned and said, "It's just right to leave, don't worry. She has already saved his life, whether that man left on his own or was taken away by an enemy, it has nothing to do with her." Meng Liangchen finally rested on the carriage for the night, and set off early the next day towards his destination. He arrived at the destination around noon. Meng Liangchen got off the carriage and stood at the entrance of the village, smelling the refreshing fragrance of flowers. At the entrance of the village chief and several villagers were already waiting. When they saw Meng Liangchen coming down, they quickly welcomed him. "Is this Miss Meng?" We have been waiting for her for a long time. The village chief looked like a cultured old man, and Meng Liangchen politely nodded at him. It's me. Are you the village chief? The two chatted while the village chief led Meng Liangchen and his group into the village. In order to save time, Meng Liangchen suggested that the village chief take them to the location behind the mountain. A large peach forest was planted on the back mountain, and at this time, the peach blossoms were in full bloom. When the mountain breeze blew over, the mountain was filled with the fragrance of flowers, and the scene of scattered petals was magnificent. Meng Liangchen walked through the woods and reached out to catch a fallen petal. He leaned towards his nose to smell it, then crushed it with his fingers to see if the juice was rich. He nodded in satisfaction. Sure, I have all the flowers in this peach forest. You can organize various villagers to pick them, and I will purchase them at the previously agreed price. As soon as the village chief heard that all the wrinkles were coming out, he quickly nodded and said, "Okay, don't worry, I will pick the flowers as quickly as possible." Meng Liangchen gave a glance to Shihong behind him, and Shihong immediately approached the village chief to explain the precautions and requirements for the petals. Meng Liangchen turned around in the forest, admiring the beautiful scenery, when suddenly a group of people ran up from the foot of the mountain. "Stop it! We don't sell these peach blossoms. We don't agree." The woman's shout came, and Meng Liangchen unexpectedly turned his head to look. Several village women dressed up ran towards him, looking eager and angry. Meng Liangchen looked at the several village women walking briskly and was somewhat surprised. Are they here to cause trouble or what? The village chief's expression changed when he saw the person coming. "Third wife, what are you doing here? Go back quickly." The third daughter-in-law has a thin figure, a yellowish complexion, and appears somewhat weak, but she exudes a strong aura. "Village chief, we don't agree to pick flowers." "Yes, we don't agree." The other village women followed closely. "What nonsense! What should we do? Women should not interfere in this matter." The village chief frowned angrily. But the third daughter-in-law was not intimidated and said, "Village chief, if you sell the flowers now, you won't be able to grow peaches. What will we do to make a living from now on?" Meng Liangchen finally understood what the contradiction between the two sides was. "Didn't you discuss it well?" When the village chief saw Meng Liangchen asking, he was afraid that the business would not be successful. He quickly said, "These women have long hair and short knowledge. Miss, please don't have the same view as them." Unexpectedly, his words directly angered the wife of the third family, and she was about to push Meng Liangchen. "You go, we won't sell." Meng Liangchen was unprepared and was startled. Fortunately, she followed Shi Chui and reached out to stop him. "What are you doing? Don't hurt my young lady." The village chief's face sank and he reached out to the village men, saying, "You guys take them down, don't let them collide with the nobles." After hearing this, the few men were about to step forward, and Meng Liangchen frowned slightly. "Wait a moment." The village chief was afraid that the situation would escalate, so he quickly said to Meng Liangchen, "Miss, rural women are not sensible. Don't argue with them." Meng Liangchen took a step forward and asked, "Why don't you want to sell flowers? Is it because I didn't give enough money?" The village chief quickly replied, "That's enough, it's because they don't have foresight and only think they can't sell peaches." At this moment, the wife of the third family interjected, "Miss, if you pick all the flowers, you won't be able to bear peaches. The money for selling flowers will also be spent. How will we live our future?" Meng Liangchen nodded, only then did he understand why they came up to make a scene. "Don't you have any other livelihood? Don't grow crops. We have little rainfall here, and we rely on the mountains. It can't rain much in a year, and the harvest from farming is not much. We also have to pay grain taxes to the court. We can't even bear to eat a single grain all year round." The third daughter-in-law started crying while speaking, and the other women also wiped away their tears. Meng Liangchen looked at the few people who were almost all pale and skinny, and understood that the villagers were afraid of living difficulties. Hey! There's nothing I can do about it. What do you want me to do as the village chief? The villagers can't cook for several families anymore. Adults can go hungry, but children can't. It's just spring, and the crops in the fields haven't ripened yet. Finally, someone said they want to harvest peach blossoms. This is a chance to survive. The village chief also looked embarrassed at this moment. For a moment, everyone fell silent. Meng Liangchen looked around and saw that these peach trees were all growing on the mountain, with a large area and wide distribution. Do these peach trees on the mountain all have their own owners? The village chief replied, they are all distributed to the villagers, and they all have their own families. Meng Liangchen nodded and asked his third wife, how much do these peach trees earn in a year? Have you calculated it? The third wife was confused and couldn't answer for a moment. My family's total can sell for about 50 taels of silver, a male villager estimated. Meng Liangchen thought for a moment and said, so, I'll take care of how many peach trees there are on your mountain. Starting from 5 years, a tree will cost 200 won a year. As long as the peach blossoms bloom well and the trees are healthy and lush, I'll harvest them all. As soon as her words were spoken, the villagers looked at each other in surprise, some of them couldn't believe it. A tree worth 200 won. The village chief spoke somewhat awkwardly. Meng Liangchen nodded and said, yes, I will send someone to assist you in registering. You can organize the villagers to collect the silver and sign the contract. The village chief didn't understand what a contract was, but Meng Liangchen briefly explained it to him. The villagers were immersed in joy during the class and did not raise any objections. When Meng Liangchen went down the mountain from the other end, he found that the scenery and air here were very good, and there were also many precious trees. If placed in modern times, it could be developed into a tourist area. Just as he was thinking about it, a small stream caught Meng Liangchen's eye. Is this a mountain spring? The village chief quickly replied beside him, it's a mountain spring that flows down from the mountain. When there is no water in the well below the mountain, the villagers come to the mountain to fetch water. Meng Liangchen walked up to the creek and squatted down, reaching out behind him and saying, give me the kettle. Drunk Meng Liangchen reached out to her Kong with red eyes and said, can you give me a collection? Can you give me a recommendation? Can you give me a comment? Can you give me a suggestion? Can you catch a bug? End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Regrets coming here. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8 Regrets coming here. Xiao Shizue handed the kettle over, and Meng Liangchen poured the water directly into it, then filled the stream with water. The stream is clean and clear, with no impurities at all. Occasionally, petals float over, adding a touch of artistic conception. Meng Liangchen put the kettle to his mouth and took a sip, sweet and thirst-quenching, with an indescribable taste unique to mountain spring water. Is there no shortage of water in the village now? Meng Liangchen stood up and asked the village chief. No shortage, no shortage. If there is no shortage of water, I can also take over the mountain spring water here. 5 taels of silver per year, what does the village chief think? 5 taels of silver. The village chief's voice trembled a bit. This is just the water left on the mountain, nobody belongs to it. This young lady will give 5 taels of silver when she comes up. Meng Liangchen nodded and said, it's a yearly payment, but I need your people to transport it to my store in the city. I'll take out the carriage, and you can guarantee timely delivery, quantity, and quality of the water every day. You need to take fresh mountain spring water every day without any impurities. The village chief nodded repeatedly and said, okay, we can do it. We can do it. When Meng Liangchen went down the mountain, it was already time for lunch. The villagers may have heard the wind and treated Meng Liangchen and his group as money-giving gods, offering them their best food and meat to entertain them. Meng Liangchen was eating a simple farmhouse meal and receiving warm hospitality from everyone. Looking at the relaxed smiles on the faces of the villagers, he was also very happy in his heart. It was already afternoon after finishing lunch, and after signing the contract, it was almost evening. The villagers were too enthusiastic, so Meng Liangchen decided to set off early tomorrow morning to return to Beijing and avoid camping in the wilderness. He gave the village chief money to arrange a cleaner yard. In the evening, Meng Liangchen and his group were called out by the villagers. The villagers cooked a lot of mountain delicacies, sang and danced around the fire, and drank their own homemade grain wine and fruit wine. Meng Liangchen also took a few sips before getting drunk. This wine is also a business opportunity. It tastes delicious without any addition, and there is no hex technology. You know so much, the voice in your ear rang out leisurely. Meng Liangchen, who was drunk in a daze, was startled. She only then realized that the sound in her ears had been quiet for a long time. Our era was different from yours, and people were also different, each with their own strengths. Really? Do you regret coming here? Do you regret it? Meng Liangchen fell silent for a moment. Don't regret it. In her own world, Dad doesn't hurt her, Mom doesn't love her, younger brother bullies her, wrongs him, and Mom and Dad always stand on his side, always saying, when you're old and you're a sister, you have to let younger brother go. But she was also a young girl who was only a few years old. Later, when she applied for college in another city, she didn't ask for any more money from her family. She relied on e-commerce platforms and gradually became more and more prosperous economically. But her parents didn't intend to let her go. They brought her to the city where she developed and asked her to pay for her brother's wedding house and dowry. Meng Liangchen's eyes, looking at the flames, were somewhat hazy. I don't regret it. After coming here, although she hasn't seen her mother, she has a loving father. I'm just sorry for taking up your place, your dad. Meng Liangchen's words were vague and he didn't hear the sigh in his ear. Why is it my position? It's yours. The next morning, Meng Liangchen's convoy left the mountain village and headed back to the capital. The road went smoothly and in the evening, they arrived at the general's mansion. Meng Liangchen got off the carriage and saw Meng Liangjing anxiously turning around at the door. Sister, you're back. Upon seeing Meng Liangchen return, Meng Liangjing's face improved slightly, as if he had finally breathed a sigh of relief. Meng Liangchen drank a bit too much last night, had a very uncomfortable hangover, and had a tiring journey all the way. His body seemed to have fallen apart, and he was too lazy to deal with Meng Liangjing. So he vaguely responded and walked towards the mansion. Meng Liangjing followed up and asked, Sister, are you tired? Did you gain anything from this trip? Meng Liangchen nodded and said, I'm tired and I want to rest. My sister doesn't need to take it anymore. Let's go back. Meng Liangchen clearly did not want to answer her words. Meng Liangjing was not foolish, and it was natural to see that Meng Liangchen's attitude towards him had changed since a few days ago. Sister, what kind of misunderstanding do you have with me? Meng Liangjing's expression was desolate, as if very sad. There's no misunderstanding, just tired and wanting to sleep, don't call me for dinner. Meng Liangchen was almost in his yard by now, and Meng Liangjing was a bit anxious. So, will you still go to the palace for a banquet tomorrow? Meng Liangchen's action of opening the door was paused, and she almost forgot about it completely. Besides, if I'm really tired, I won't go, he said as he closed the door. Meng Liangjing didn't give up and stood at the door staring at the tightly closed wooden door. It wasn't until Shihong spoke up to remind him that he gave Shihong a fierce look and shook his sleeves before leaving. A few little girls watched as her departing figure disappeared at the entrance of the courtyard, all pursing their lips. The ambition of a wolf is as clear as ever. Xiao Shizue rolled her eyes. Shihong and Shirlan pursed their lips and smiled. Miss knows in her heart that she won't be easily fooled. Shihong greatly admired Meng Liangchen. All three of them were personally selected by Meng Liangchen from the mansion a while ago, and their thoughts were all focused on Meng Liangchen. They also wholeheartedly believed and supported Meng Liangchen. After Meng Liangchen entered the room, he took off his clothes and rolled into the bed to cover himself with a blanket, exhaling comfortably. "Are you going?" A voice of inquiry came in my ear. Meng Liangchen closed his eyes and asked, "Do you want me to go?" There was a momentary silence in the voice. The previous life was tomorrow, and I saw him for the first time. Meng Liangchen rolled over and made himself feel more comfortable lying down. "You wouldn't still have a stubborn heart for that scumbag, would you?" "No. I made an agreement with him in my last life not to see him again." Excitedly speaking, the woman's voice suddenly stopped. What did you guess?" "It's nothing. If you don't want to tell me, it's useless for me to guess randomly." Meng Liangchen was already feeling a bit drowsy and didn't want to waste his brain. Silent in his ears, Meng Liangchen quickly limited his speed and fell asleep. On the second day, Meng Liangchen slept until almost noon. After waking up, she had just finished washing and was asking what clothes she was wearing today when Qin walked in with Meng Liangjing. "Liangchen, have you already woken up?" Qin wore a proper smile on her face. Meng Liangchen shouted in response, "Why did Auntie come to my house so early?" Actually, she can probably figure it out, afraid it's still about entering the palace. Qin waved behind her and said to Meng Liangchen, "Aren't you taking your sister into the palace today? I'm afraid your clothes and jewelry may not be suitable, so I prepared them for you in advance to give you a surprise." "Thank you, little cutie. This is the first time the richest person has received a reward." "Thank you very much, Moon. Also, I don't know who gave me 6 monthly tickets. It was really a surprise." Moon is lying on the ground. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Entering the Palace. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Entering the palace. Meng Liangchen looked at the clothes and jewelry on the tray in the maid's hand and raised an eyebrow. "It's quite cost-effective." Meng Liangchen glanced at Meng Liangjing, his thoughts flowing, and he smiled. "Thank you very much, Auntie." Qin and Meng Liangjing looked delighted, knowing that Meng Liangchen was going. "Let's go back first. You should go to the front hall earlier during lunch. The master didn't see you when he came back last night and kept talking about you for a long time." Qin's smile remained unchanged, and after speaking, he left with Meng Liangjing. Shihong took the tray they sent and stood beside Meng Liangchen. "Miss, what should I do with this?" Meng Liangchen stood up and reached out his finger to play with the things in the tray. "The texture and color of the clothes are all excellent, but they don't have any distinctive features. Jewelry is quite good, they are all good things. She gave it for free, don't give it for free, and besides, she doesn't intend to make any fuss at the party. These are enough." Aunt's kindness naturally means accepting and making good use of it. Xiao Shizui frowned and said, "Miss, they don't seem like good people." Meng Liangchen chuckled and said, "Xiao Shizui, your mouth is too sharp. I'll call you Xiao Shidao." Xiao Shizui didn't understand what a knife meant, but she also knew that Meng Liangchen was teasing her. With a pout of her mouth, she was particularly cute. Meng Liangchen had lunch in his own room. In the afternoon, he packed up and went to her father's place for a walk. Her father told her not to be afraid of things in the palace, and if anyone provoked her, she must fight back. Meng Liangchen felt that his father's worries were all unnecessary. How many dare to cause trouble in the palace? Coming out of her father's house, Meng Liangchen noticed that Meng Liangjing had been waiting in front of the carriage at the door for an unknown amount of time. This cheap little sister had clearly been carefully dressed, with a face covered in powder and mouth fat, pink peach blossoms on her face, and a peach blossom on her head swaying. Paired with a peach-pink spring outfit, she appeared charming and clever. Seeing Meng Liangchen walking over, Meng Liangjing immediately wore a obedient smile on his face. Sister, let's go. She made up her mind what to do at the palace banquet today. Standing on the steps, Meng Liangchen was dressed in a goose-yellow golden silk embroidered spring outfit, with a sheep-fat jade bracelet in his hand and a simple jade hairpin of the same color on his head. His earrings were also matched, and he looked average without any outstanding features, but the key was being generous and appropriate, not eye-catching. The two of them got on the carriage, one in front and one behind. Meng Liangchen sat in the front seat, while Meng Liangjing sat on her right side by the window. Sister, have I been doing something bad lately? Meng Liangjing raised the question that was unanswered yesterday. No, you did pretty well. Meng Liangchen blinked at her, admiring her scheming. Meng Liangjing lowered his head slightly and felt a bit aggrieved, really. But I feel like my sister has been treating me a bit differently lately. Meng Liangchen thought for a moment and asked, what do you mean, something to eat, drink, and play with? I haven't given it to you before. Meng Liangjing shook his head and said, I don't care about these things. What I care about is my sister's attitude towards me. I'm not as close as before. Meng Liangchen asked, can you give an example? Meng Liangjing bit his lip, seeming unable to speak up. Sister treats me like an outsider. She used to take me with her when she went there, but now she doesn't. Even with the hassle of cleaning up the books, sister would rather be exhausted than let me help. Oh, so I'm still thinking about her precious money, that's not acceptable. She's thinking about your secret recipe, the voice in her ear reminded, with a slight chill in her voice. Meng Liangchen's mind changed and he said, it's not that I didn't miss you either. I was really too busy a while ago, and those accounts were too messy. I'm afraid you won't be able to handle them, and I'm afraid you've been a troublesome aunt before. I'm afraid you've also helped a lot, but now it's all in my hands. I'm sorry to trouble you again. Meng Liangchen sighed and continued, and I have some strengths in this area. I can't compare to you in terms of music, chess, calligraphy, and painting. I'm afraid my dad will criticize me. Meng Liangjing lowered his contemptuous gaze and looked up with a worried expression. Who said that my sister has no other strengths besides that? She is good-looking and also the legitimate daughter. There are few in the entire capital that can compare to my sister. Does younger sister really feel that way? Meng Liangchen looked moved. He praising and killing is just the usual style of these two women. It's strange that she fell for it. The two of them had a great conversation all the way until they reached the entrance of the palace, where they needed to get off and walk. When Meng Liangchen got off the car, many officials and female relatives who had been invited to the banquet had already arrived, each dressed appropriately and with a bright spot. Meng Liangchen felt a pleasing feeling when he saw them. It feels like when ancient emperors selected concubines. Meng Liangchen's appearance is also one of the best in the entire capital city. Even if he is dressed simply, his face is still a highlight among these birds and swallows, which can be noticed at a glance. Meng Liangchen, along with Meng Liangjing and Shihong Shirlan, followed the crowd to the main hall where the birthday banquet was held. The palace maids took them to the designated seats and sat down. There were already many people in the main hall, but the empress had not yet arrived. At this moment, it was not very quiet. The ladies who knew each other gathered together and whispered in whispers, while the ladies of high rank exchanged greetings. There was only Meng Liangchen at the table, and no one came to greet them, appearing a bit quiet. Before Meng Liangchen arrived, the reason why the original owner had no good friends was because Meng Liangjing always instilled some inappropriate information in her ear. The original owner was soft-eared and trusted Meng Liangjing, which made her cut off opportunities to befriend the outside world. As for Meng Liangjing, even if she has her own sisters, she is afraid that they are all concubines in some officials' houses, and they are not qualified to come to such a banquet as the Queen's birthday banquet. As the banquet approached, the Empress's sacred carriage fell from outside the door, and the hall fell silent for an instant. With the Empress's footsteps entering the hall, everyone in the hall knelt and saluted, and the sound echoed throughout the entire hall. The empress walked slowly up to the hall, wealthy and dignified, and only sat down in her position without ceremony. Today, on our palace's birthday, we invite ladies and young ladies to come and celebrate together. You don't need to be too formal, just feel at home and it will be natural. The queen's voice sounded pleasant, with a hint of gentleness in her majesty. Meng Liangchen sat in the second row and looked up, feeling that the queen's age looked like it was in her 20s, not even in her 30s. The birthday party officially started with the reading of the mother beside the queen. The maids-in-waiting lined up to deliver fruit dim sum and tea to the tables in the hall. The meals were arranged at the back. In the center of the hall, there were beautiful dancers dancing, which was pleasing to the eyes. Meng Liangchen drank too much the day before yesterday, so she didn't dare to get drunk anymore. In her concept, if she didn't get drunk in a large market, she wouldn't get drunk. Previously, when suppliers invited her to eat, she didn't drink alcohol. Maybe we need to bring out 2 handsome guys for a stroll. I wonder if one of them is to your liking. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. A Song of Peach Blossoms. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. A Song of Peach Blossoms. After a few moments of the show, someone presented a celebratory poem, a rare treasure, to the empress. Meng Liangchen, because his gift was not special, had already handed it to the palace maid who specifically received it at the door. But looking at the current situation, it seems that someone will stand up at each table to recite poetry and compose music, and some will even offer their talents. Meng Liangchen is a bit dumbfounded. Am I going to? What happened in my past life? The queen will call you, the voice in her ear answered softly. Ah. How did you do it in your previous life? Seeing that it was about to be his turn at the table, Meng Liangchen felt a bit sweaty in his palms. Before, when he was in e-commerce, he was live streaming and faced millions of fans on his phone without feeling nervous, but now in this scene, the difference is quite significant. At this moment, outside the main hall, a man dressed in a purple brocade robe was approaching in this direction. This man was Mu Yun, the second son of the empress. He had a face like a crown of jade, deep eyebrows and eyes, a high nose bridge, thin lips, a straight posture, and a scattered aura, which was rare compared to others. He walked extremely fast, as if in a hurry to celebrate his mother's birthday, but stopped the sudden shouting from behind. Second brother. Mu Yun paused in his footsteps and looked behind him. Big brother. He is the legitimate son of the queen, Mu Zhe. They are 2 siblings of the same mother, with 5 or 6 similarities in appearance. However, Mu Zhe is taller than Mu Yun, and her body is also stronger than Mu Yun. Her skin is slightly deep, and her aura is cold and hard. She is dressed in a dark black robe and exudes an aura that strangers should not enter. Why are you in such a hurry? Why don't you wait for me? Mu picked a few steps to catch up with Mu Yun. I thought you wouldn't come, did you get well and come out? Mu Yun said in surprise. A few days ago, Mu Zhe was seriously injured and quietly returned to the palace. Only the Empress Dowager, Father Emperor, and he knew about it. He kept it hidden from the outside world. His elder brother's injury was very serious, and Mu Yun thought he would spend a few more days recuperating. Mu Zhe's face didn't have any extra expressions, but her expression didn't look too good. Facing her younger brother, Mu Zhe's face showed a rare expression of helplessness. May I not come today? Besides, my mother has repeatedly reminded us both to come before. Mu Zhe said that Mu Yun also remembered the things that the empress had repeatedly requested in their ears a few days ago, that they must come today. Perhaps it was still related to their marriage. They are both 17 and 16 years old, both of whom are at the age of choosing a consort, but neither of them is in a hurry. The empress, who is a mother, may have been in a hurry for a long time. The 2 of them walked towards the palace door, one in front and one behind, and as they got closer, they heard waves of applause and praise coming from inside. The empress nodded at the legitimate daughter of the prime minister who had just delivered her congratulations, and her eyes casually scanned Meng Liangchen's face, which couldn't help but brighten. This little girl is very beautiful, likable, and has bright eyes. She asked the grandmother beside her and then looked at Meng Liangchen. Is General Meng's daughter sitting at the next table? When her question was asked, Meng Liangjing reacted the most. In her past life, it was the same. Their table was named by the empress, but Meng Liangchen was timid and dared not look directly at the empress. Therefore, she volunteered to stand up and offer her talent. If there were no accidents, the man was already standing outside the door, and he would see her. He would see her graceful dance, graceful and graceful. Meng Liangjing was thinking very well and was about to get up to answer, but a sudden sound in her ear nailed her to the spot. Ladies and gentlemen, Meng Liangchen, see Empress Dowager, Empress Qian Sui. Wishing you all the blessings of the East China Sea, with today every year and the present day every year. The queen nodded in satisfaction and shouted up. Good name, do you have any strengths in making everyone enjoy the same music? Meng Liangchen thought for a moment and realized that she has a lot of talent. If she doesn't have any talent, she really can't succeed in e-commerce. Moreover, during her college years, she was recruited into various fields and learned a lot of classical instruments. Although she couldn't be considered proficient in any field, she could still excel. Can't let Meng Liangjing stand out. The voice in my ear was somewhat gritted and anxious. Returning to Empress Dowager, I have a piece of guzheng played by my daughter and offer it to you. The empress nodded, confirming her accuracy. Immediately, a palace maid brought a guzheng and set it up in the center of the hall, placing it on a stool. Meng Liangchen sat on a stool and tried playing the qin. It has to be said that the things in this palace are really good at the antique level. It is said that the guqin is good, and today she has seen it. Just these few additions are all ringing in my ears. The sound of playing slowly began, a piece of music that no one had ever heard before, cheerful and pleasing to the ear. At the end of the song, the lingering sound lingered on the beam, and for a moment, only the remaining sound remained quiet in the main hall. What kind of music is this? It's very special. The empress regained her senses and exclaimed in amazement. Madam Hui, this song is called Peach Blossom Smile. Your birthday is in spring, which is the season when peach blossoms are in full bloom. With a smile of peach blossoms, the garden is fragrant, and your beauty will continue to grow like peach blossoms. Meng Liangchen stood up and bowed to the empress, his small mouth sweet enough to kill a person. Just kidding, is a big e-commerce platform with tens of millions of fans in vain. The empress was amused by what she said, and burst out laughing several times before offering her a reward. After thanking Meng Liangchen, she returned to her seat. Meng Liangchen's performance among a group of noble women may not be particularly outstanding, but it can still be considered without any mistakes. Two men outside the hall stood at the door, looking at Meng Liangchen with different thoughts. Mu Yun only felt that this woman was special. He had never noticed before that General Meng's legitimate daughter had such charm. However, Mu Zhe's eyes were filled with interest. This girl, he had seen her for the second time, and each time she gave people an unexpected feeling. The two of them took advantage of this gap and walked into the main hall. Everyone bent down to salute, and both of them bowed to the empress at the same time. When the empress saw the two of them coming, their smiles became even stronger. Just come and sit down somewhere. Mu Zhe and Mu Yun exchanged a glance. Mother, there are still matters to discuss with our father and emperor, so we won't stay. The empress's smile faded by 2 points. She sent them here today to meet the noblewomen of various families in the capital and see if they met. It was time to settle the deal. These two were obviously just coming to deal with her through the motions now. After Mu Zhe and Mu Yun finished speaking, they bowed and left. The empress's face was obviously not as happy as before, but how the banquet should be held or not was just a small interlude. However, the noblewomen from various families are not calm anymore. They actually had their own plans when they came to the banquet today, which was to get into the eyes of the Empress. Now that they have the privilege of seeing the two princes produced by the Empress, it was really an unexpected joy. I hope the two princes can favor them. I didn't expect them to turn a corner and leave, feeling somewhat lonely. Previously, scumbags appeared. Have you ever wanted to make a move? End of this chapter.